You know, in the year 1500, if you tried to heal your back pain with like a chanted spell or some kind of potion, there was a very real chance you might be burned at the stake for witchcraft.
Oh, absolutely. It was incredibly dangerous.
Right. But if you used an amethyst crystal, you were just practicing good medicine.
Yeah, nobody batted an eye.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Today, we are looking at this ultimate spiritual loophole and an incredibly global phenomenon. So welcome to today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
If you are joining us, I know you are looking for that quick, thorough download of knowledge. You want the insight and those like aha moments without drowning in the information overload. And our mission today is to explore a fascinating stack of sources, specifically looking at excerpts from the book Sacred Stones, Crystals in Global Religious Traditions.
Yeah, and we are basically dissecting a universal human behavior here that spans across millennia. I mean, when you look at the ancient world...
From Egypt and Greece.
Yeah, Egypt, Greece, Rome, India, China, you see entirely disconnected cultures, right? Separated by oceans and centuries, and they're all looking at these colorful stones and coming to the exact same conclusion.
Oh, they're powerful.
Exactly, that these are powerful spiritual tools. They were, universally recognized as vessels of divine energy used to honor gods, protect the vulnerable, and heal the sick.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we get into what people actually do with these stones, we really need to understand what these traditions believe crystals fundamentally are.
Right. They aren't just looking at them as pretty paperweights.
No, not at all. Across multiple faiths, they are viewed as conduits. The source material shows this really consistent belief that a crystal takes an invisible, overwhelming force, like divine energy, and breaks it down into distinct, usable parts.
Yeah, like a prism.
Exactly. To put it in physical terms, it is like looking at a crystal as a spiritual prism. You have this blinding white light of the universe, and the stone catches it, refracts it, and gives you a specific spectrum you can actually work with. Sort of like a spiritual USB drive or a rechargeable battery.
That's a great way to put it.
But that makes me wonder, if they just absorb and store whatever energy is around them, does that mean a crystal can go bad? Like, can it get full of negative data?
What's fascinating here is how the Buddhist perspective actually addresses that exact issue. Because in Buddhism, the texts are very clear that the ultimate power does not originate from the rock itself.
Wait, it doesn't?
No, it comes from the energy temporarily housed within its structure. Because of that, the physical quality of the stone matters immensely, and it requires rigorous maintenance.
Maintenance? Like what, you have to tune it?
More like you have to empty it.
Oh.
Yeah. If you are using a crystal to aid in meditation, to bring about a sense of deep peace and mental balance, you are pulling energy through that stone. And the belief is that the crystalline lattice can trap stagnant or chaotic energy.
Oh, almost like a physical filter trapping debris.
Exactly like a filter. So it has to be cleansed regularly. Monks and practitioners would wash them in specific waters or expose them to moonlight.
I've heard of the moonlight thing.
Yeah, or they'd use sound vibrations from singing bowls to literally shake the spiritual debris loose. The whole mechanism relies on the idea that the stone can become full or clogged.
So there is a vulnerability there. If it's a filter, it can get saturated with negative residue and actually start leaking that chaos back into your meditation.
Precisely. Which is why the reverence and the cleansing rituals are non-negotiable for them. Now, if we look at Taoism...
Chinese philosophy.
Right. An ancient Chinese philosophical and religious tradition deeply focused on the flow of vital energy, or qi. The framework evolves a bit here. Taoism takes the concept of a passive vessel and turns it into something active.
How so?
Well, they view crystals not just as filters, but as literal living entities that possess their own biological style resonance.
Wait, living entities? They considered the rocks to be alive?
In a metaphysical sense, yes. Because crystals grow in the earth, Taoists believe they possessed a concentrated, highly organized form of earth qi.
Okay, that makes sense.
Their rigid, perfect internal structure was thought to be the physical manifestation of harmony. So they use them specifically to balance the human body's energy centers, the chakras or meridians.
Wow.
Yeah, by placing a highly organized living crystal onto a chaotic or sick human body, the belief was that the stone's perfect resonance would force the body's chaotic energy to align with it. It's an active collaboration between the biology of the human and the geometry of the stone.
That is a brilliant way to understand it. You aren't just rubbing a rock on a sore muscle. You are using a master template of harmony to straighten out your own energetic wrinkles.
Exactly. And we see another variation of this in Zoroastrianism, too.
Oh, interesting.
The framework shifts slightly, but it maintains that core concept of an earthly anchor for divine light. In Zoroastrian texts, crystals are seen as a direct physical manifestation of the universe's divine energy.
So, like a literal piece of heaven on earth.
Basically, they are essentially a concentrated drop of cosmic light that you can hold in your hand. Holding the stone was a method to elevate the practitioner's vibrational state, helping them access higher levels of consciousness.
To connect directly with their higher self.
Exactly.
So we have established the mechanism of the crystal as a vessel, a filter, and a master template for energy. But if a structure can hold and direct energy, the next logical application is that it can transmit it, right? Bridging the physical and the spiritual realms seems to be the next major function. We go from storing energy to actively establishing communication. So basically like a cosmic Wi-Fi router.
Bridging that gap is arguably the most critical function in several indigenous and ancient traditions. They transition from personal healing to cosmic communication.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the sources show us that people aren't just sitting quietly with these stones. They are using them as active communication devices to literally talk to the other side.
Yes.
How does that actually work in practice? Are they like holding them up like an antenna?
In some cases, the methodology is surprisingly close to that, actually. Let's look at Native American spirituality. Similar to the Taoist belief, many Native traditions consider crystals to be living entities.
Right.
But their application is highly focused on gaining guidance from the spirit world. And a primary mechanism for this is dream work.
Oh, like sleeping with them.
Exactly. Practitioners wouldn't just keep a crystal nearby. They would intentionally place specific stones under their resting heads, or hold them during deep trance states.
What does that do exactly?
Well, the crystal acts as a resonant tuning fork. By keeping it in close physical proximity during a vulnerable receptive state like sleep, the belief is that the stone tunes the individual's mental frequency to match the spiritual plane.
Cutting through the static of the waking world.
Yes, so they can receive clear instructions or visions.
It is about changing the baseline frequency of the human mind to match the broadcast of the spirits.
Exactly.
And what about the ancient Mediterranean cultures? Because Egypt and Greece are famous for their oracles and divination. Did they use crystals in the same way?
They did, but it was framed much more heavily around formalized divination rather than personal dream work. In ancient Egyptian and Greek societies, crystals were essential technologies for predicting the future.
Interpreting the will of the pantheon.
Right. And what the sources point out that is deeply fascinating is that crystals were rarely used in isolation there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They were a crucial component of a larger divination suite, routinely paired with astrology and tarot, or at least its early equivalents.
So if astrology is the macro view mapping the massive movements of the planets and the gods, the crystal is the localized receiver on the ground.
That is the exact mechanism. The astrologer reads the sky to understand the vast cosmic weather, but uses the crystal on the table to catch that massive energy and focus it down into a specific readable answer for the person sitting in front of them.
It grounds the infinite into the immediate.
Exactly. And we see a highly localized version of this in African traditional religions as well, where crystals are the key to accessing divine wisdom, but the communication is often deeply personal.
Like familial.
Yes, familial. They are used to make direct contact with ancestors.
Wait, how does a stone connect you to a deceased relative?
By altering the acoustic and spiritual properties of a space. In many of these traditions, practitioners place specific stones within sacred spaces, like ancestral shrines. The belief is that the crystals create a spiritual atmosphere that is dense or resonant enough to allow the ancestors to manifest their presence or their messages.
Wow. So the stones build a localized bridge between the world of the living and the realm of the dead.
Exactly.
Okay, we have covered the grand cosmic communication and the deep internal meditation, but I have to stop you here. Because when you look at the source material, we see these practices spanning across history.
Sure.
And that brings up a massive historical and theological contradiction. Because Christianity and Judaism historically had incredibly strict, heavily enforced prohibitions against idolatry, witchcraft, and magic.
Oh, absolutely.
People were exiled or worse for practicing sorcery. How on earth did they justify using magic stones without facing severe punishment or excommunication? So what does this all mean? We see these distinct distinct religions all using these stones for the exact same protective purposes. Is the crystal just the ultimate spiritual multi-tool?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's the ultimate historical loophole, really. And it comes down to a fundamental shift in vocabulary.
Vocabulary?
Yeah. In the medieval Abrahamic mindset, magic was invoking spirits or demons to alter reality. That was strictly forbidden.
Right.
However, using a crystal wasn't considered magic. It was considered leveraging the natural properties that God himself had embedded into the earth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Medieval scholars and lapidaries, which were books detailing the properties of stones, categorized crystals alongside medicinal herbs.
So it's just medicine to them.
Right. Just as chamomile naturally soothes the stomach because God designed it that way, an amethyst or a sapphire naturally wards off illness or absorbs negative energy because of its divine design.
That is a brilliant theological workaround. It's not a spell, it's an earthly prescription.
Yeah.
God made the stone, so using it is just utilizing the natural pharmacy.
Exactly. And because of that loophole, you see these stones used extensively for everyday, highly practical defense and physical healing. I mean, the grand cosmic communication is important, but daily survival in the ancient and medieval world was brutal.
Right, people just needed to know how to fix a terrible headache.
Or ward off a sudden streak of bad luck.
And the coping mechanisms look incredibly similar across completely different theologies. Let's look at Judaism first. How were they physically applying these stones?
In Jewish mystical traditions and everyday folk practice, crystals were often used in conjunction with specific prayers or engraved amulets to heal highly targeted physical ailments.
Like what?
We are talking about pressing specific stones against the body to relieve back pain, soothe digestive issues, or cure migraines. But it extended into psychological and spiritual defense as well.
For mental health?
Yeah, they were heavily utilized to combat mental struggles like deep melancholy or anxiety, and most crucially to act as a shield against the evil eye.
Ah, the evil eye being a curse cast by a malevolent glare, usually driven by envy, right?
Yes. The belief was that a hateful or envious look could literally transmit negative, destructive energy toward a person.
And the crystal stops that.
Right? Worn as an amulet, it acted as a physical interceptor. The mechanism here is that the stone's structure catches and absorbs that psychic attack before it can penetrate the wearer's own energetic field.
It is a literal metaphysical shield taking the hit.
Exactly.
And if we look at Christianity, despite the vast theological differences, the mechanics of the stones are almost identical, aren't they?
Very much so.
Yeah.
In Christian practice, particularly through the Middle Ages and Renaissance, crystals were used to absorb negative energy and fundamentally transform it into positive energy.
Okay.
They were utilized to heal physical ailments, but also heavily integrated into prayer. A Christian practitioner might hold a rock crystal while praying, believing the purity and clarity of the stone would amplify their prayer.
Shooting it straight up to the divine.
Right, while simultaneously absorbing any distracting or dark thoughts.
It is the exact same hardware running a completely different spiritual operating system.
That's a perfect analogy.
The stone is still doing the job of absorbing the bad and amplifying the good, whether you are in a synagogue or a cathedral. But what happens when we look at traditions outside of the monotheistic structure, like Wicca and modern paganism?
In Wicca and pagan traditions, the use of crystals is deeply woven into ritual and skull work, and it relies heavily on the spatial and structural properties of the stones.
Okay.
They are used for emotional and physical healing, certainly, but Wiccan practices place a massive emphasis on using crystals to explicitly cleanse and purify physical spaces.
So they aren't just shielding a single human body.
No, they are actively clearing the environment to create a sacred boundary.
How do they actually execute that? Are they just like scattering them around a room?
It is highly systematic. They often create what is called a crystal grid. A practitioner might place specific stones, like clear quartz or black tourmaline, at the 4 cardinal points of a room or property.
To box it in.
Yeah. The underlying mechanism is the belief that the energetic fields of these stones connect with one another, forming an invisible structural net across the space.
Wow.
Any energy trying to enter that space has to pass through this metaphysical lattice, which filters out the negative, chaotic vibrations and only allows purified energy inside.
Which perfectly transitions us from the concept of individual survival to community structure and creating sacred spaces.
Exactly.
Because moving from just healing a single person's anxiety to gridding an entire room, we start seeing crystals being used to physically anchor massive religious systems.
Right.
It's like dropping a pin on a spiritual map, a way for humans to say the divine is exactly here.
This raises an important question, though, about human psychology. Because human beings are finite physical creatures. We struggle to grasp infinite cosmic concepts.
Right, it's too big for us.
Exactly. We need tangible anchors. We need a physical object that we can touch and see to represent the invisible, overwhelming presence of the divine.
And a crystal seems perfectly suited for that job. I mean, it is solid, heavy stone born from the dirt, but it is translucent.
Yeah.
It catches and bends light in a way that feels inherently otherworldly. It sits right on the border of the tangible and the magical.
Which is why they feature so prominently on altars globally. Let's examine Hinduism. In Hindu practice, crystals are absolutely central to the puja, the ritual of offering and worship.
Okay.
Crystals are placed directly on the altar, but they aren't decorations. They are believed to physically house the divine presence during the ritual.
Wow.
Furthermore, in Vedic astrology, crystals take on a massive cosmic scale. They are believed to actually influence and mitigate the massive gravitational and energetic pull of planets and stars.
Wait, I really want to focus on that scale for a second. We are talking about a stone small enough to hold in the palm of your hand being used to counterbalance the influence of a planet millions of miles away.
Yes.
How did they rationalize that mechanism?
It relies on the concept of corresponding frequencies. Vedic astrology posits that planets emit specific cosmic rays that impact human karma and biology.
Okay.
If a planet is negatively impacting a person, they are prescribed a specific gemstone that naturally refracts that exact cosmic frequency.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, the stone acts as a localized deflector shield. It is a brilliant example of using a micro object to negotiate with a macro force.
We see a similar anchoring effect in Shintoism, the traditional religion of Japan, right?
Yes. In Shintoism, crystals are utilized to amplify prayers, but more specifically, they function to allow practitioners to connect directly with the kami.
The spirits.
Right, the spirits, natural forces, or holy powers that animate the world. The crystal acts as the focal point. By bringing a pure, resonant stone into a shrine, it helps clear the spiritual static of the surrounding area.
Setting the stage, basically.
Exactly. It brings clarity and balance, fostering a shared sacred space where the human and the kami can temporarily interact.
It provides the clean meeting ground.
Exactly that. And perhaps the most visceral, intense example of this anchoring is found in shamanic practices across the globe.
Oh, yes.
Shamanism is entirely predicated on walking between the physical realm and the spiritual realm.
Right.
Trance states, soul retrievals, interacting with powerful spirits. It is dangerous, chaotic work.
Yeah.
For the shaman, the crystal is the ultimate structural tether.
Like a lifeline.
Exactly. It is used to direct their own energy, deflect violent negativity from the spirit realm, and fundamentally balance those two overlapping realities.
Yeah.
The shaman uses the profound structural integrity of the crystal to literally hold the fabric of the spiritual and physical worlds together.
So they don't get lost in the chaos of a ritual.
Precisely.
That is an unbelievable amount of pressure to put on a rock. But, when you look at it through the lens of all these sources we've explored today, it has never just been a rock.
No, never.
It has been a battery, a filter, a communicator, a shield, a medical device, and a cosmic anchor. And this brings us right back to you listening to this deep dive, because the relevance of this global phenomenon is profound.
It really is.
Whether you consider yourself a hardcore skeptic who only believes in measurable data, or you are a deeply spiritual person who uses these stones in your own daily practice, this massive, undeniable overlap across thousands of years of human history reveals something fundamental about us.
Yeah.
Regardless of where or when humans have lived, we all share this deep, urgent need to find tangible meaning, to establish balance, and to feel a sense of control and connection in a dangerous, unpredictable world. We want the vast, invisible universe to be something we can reach out and touch.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Building on everything we have just discussed regarding the ancient belief that crystals absorb, filter, and transmit energy.
Okay.
Think about the modern technology that runs your life right now. Today, modern science uses actual physical quartz crystals in our watches to keep incredibly precise time.
Wait, really?
Yes. Why? Because of the piezoelectric effect. When you apply mechanical stress to a quartz crystal, it generates an electric charge, and when you apply an electric charge, it physically oscillates at a perfect measurable frequency.
Oh, wow.
We use quartz crystals in our radios, our computers, and our telecommunications equipment to transmit and receive specific frequencies.
Storing energy, vibrating at specific frequencies, and transmitting invisible signals. That is literally the exact mechanism the ancient texts described.
It is. The ancients said these stones were vibrating with invisible energy and could be used to tune into cosmic broadcasts. Modern physics prove that quartz naturally holds and releases an electric charge and is the ultimate tool for stabilizing radio frequencies.
That's incredible.
So the question is, could it be that our ancient ancestors somehow intuitively sensed the literal, scientifically proven conductive properties of these stones thousands of years before modern science developed the vocabulary, the microscopes, or the physics to actually explain it?
Oh, wow. The idea that the ancient priest chanting at an altar and the modern engineer building a microchip might actually be relying on the exact same physical law of nature, just describing it with different vocabularies.
Right.
That is the kind of profound realization that completely changes how you look at history. What a brilliant place to wrap up. Thank you for bringing such an incredible stack of sources to the table today for us to explore.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll see you then.